Toastmaster L.E.A.D, I see your hand. Please go right ahead.
Good evening, distinguished Toastmasters of I and everyone. So one of the things I thoroughly enjoyed about Andrew's session is the key focus around EQ, and obviously always starting with yourself and being self-aware. And the session was quite insightful, and it sent a reminder because it's a topic I thoroughly enjoy. However, I think what I had to look deep at is the triggers that I have in my life and trying to distinguish the ones that I have from a personal perspective, but also that from a professional perspective. And just looking at how the triggers impacted my day and how I had to consciously find myself making an effort to change that so that I could actually be quite productive. So it was a really insightful session.
Great, thank you, Toastmaster L.E.A., for your feedback. Who would want to go next? Before the chair randomly calls your name. Any volunteers?
I would like to propose a toast. No, I really shouldn't be drinking.
Toastmaster Eva, I see your hand. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Toastmasters. For me, the highlights for last week's session, especially being a leader, I learned how to understand my emotions, and at any point of time, if I feel that I'm about to react, just to this week itself, I was able to remember what DTM Andrew shared with us last week. And I also liked the 2 books that he shared with us. I know one of them I had already read, and I felt so empowered, because as a leader, you always have to have that view of emotional intelligence within yourself. Even if you feel angry or you sad, you have to find a way on how to keep it within yourself and breathe in and out as much as you can. So yeah, it was a great reflection. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Toastmaster Eva. Toastmaster Faso, I see your hand. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud.
Okay. Great. So thank you, Toastmaster DTM V.U.C.A. For my side, I think Toastmaster Andrew taught us in every situation we have free choices with a balance. So it depends on ourselves what we are, what kind of attitude will I adopt to face the situations. So for me, that's really, it taught me a lot about what should I say in order, like what kind of consequence do you want to see. So I made a lot of self-introspection these last days and the plan of my life, like what will be the future. Yeah, thank you so much. Over to you.
Great, thank you so much for your feedback. And as we continue with these sessions, each week we are building and adding more bricks to that wall that we are building. And so as we learn what we learn, let's also then make sure that we are implementing or making the relevant changes that we need to make in our lives as leaders. Toastmaster Mduduzi, I see your hand. Please go right ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Zawai, for an opportunity. So one thing that I was trending for me after the session we had last week, Saturday, was the ABCDE challenge. With everything that was explained, the D was the one that happened this week. I kept on disputing the belief that I have about what triggers I actually had. And it was amazing how the introspection actually worked for me. I find myself actually taking a deep breath before really getting triggered. And that for me, it really called on that emotional intelligence is not just a term that we use, but it's deeper. And it's all about each and every individual really being self-aware of what is it that they're going through and how to respond instead of being reactive. Thank you.
Thank you, Toastmaster Mduduzi. Responding and not reacting. And thank you for that reminder of the A-B-C-D-E challenge. Toastmaster Rumbidzai, please go ahead. I see your hand.
Thank you very much. Excuse me for my video, my bandwidth is a bit low. For me, the assignment we did this week was very interesting because it made me realize how many emotions when he actually gave us charts, the big chart, that what are you actually feeling? So I think going through this week and actually highlighting all the feelings I was going through, I then realized that you might be going through certain things and then managing those emotions as well. And I think the biggest highlight as well for me was you can't
Okay, it seems like we've lost Rumbidzai's connectivity. But thank you, Rumbidzai, for your input and just the fact that you are now being conscious of what emotions are being triggered or what emotions you have during your week. So that is also quite relevant. Anyone else who would like to give us their feedback, whether to raise your hand, and I will just go into the chat box. Toastmaster Marilise says, I enjoyed learning about the 4 types of identities: remembered, reflected, programmed, created, and that you can control your created identity. If you did not manage to attend last week's session, please make sure that you do go back and watch the replay so that you are also up to speed with what everyone else is talking about. Do we have any others who would want to give their feedback from last week? Okay, I see your hand, Toastmaster Nosipo, please go ahead.
Evening, DTM, Vi, and the rest of the group. For me, it's 2 simple things. They sounded so simple when he was talking about it, on top of everything else that I've learned. But 2 things that really impacted me this week is when he said his pet peeve is somebody when he writes K instead of okay. And his first thought is that this person is lazy. And I found myself, without thinking, whenever I wanted to write those short, shorthand words, and I'm thinking, no, this is giving an impression that I'm a lazy person, so to somebody out there. So it just, without thinking, it just, gave me that, Nosipo, you need to start writing in full sentences because somebody else out there is thinking something else about you. And then the second thing was when I think it was Will who was talking about somebody, if they come in late for a session with him, and he said they should know that they will have to pay extra or they should know this or that. And he said, there is no should for the other person, or they must know for the other person. You can only control you. You don't have any control over whatever the other person is doing or should be thinking. It's you. You can only control yourself. And then that just brought back to me a lot of things. You get all these frustrations because we are expecting other people to do these things, and yet you don't really have control over those people. I mean, it helps with a lot of expecting other people to do these things, and yet there is no such with other people. So yeah, just those 2 things they've a huge impact on me, and they are changing the way I do things or say things or think. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Thank you so much for the feedback. It seems connectivity is a bit of a challenge from this end today, but I am sure we will still make good progress. Let me just check in the chat box if we have any other feedback. Okay, Toastmaster Nobantu, being the master of my own destiny was truly enforced. Toastmaster Philippa, the main thing for me was self-awareness and having to really look at myself and understand myself better and deal with them rather than hide behind them. Toastmaster Edith says, thoroughly enjoyed the session. I got to reflect on the 4 identities, especially the created identity. I reflected on how my created identity can to be and how I can change it. Thank you so much to those that have given us what they took away from last week's session, which was session number 4. So we've had the very first session, vision, mission, and values. We had our second session, which was on leadership etiquette. Then we also then had emotional intelligence. I missed out, the second session was personal branding. Then we had leadership etiquette. Then we had emotional intelligence and conflict management. Today, we are going through leadership influence in a virtual VUCA world. And our facilitator for this evening, our trainer, has worn several hats. He's worn the hats of a salesman, a journalist, garments packaging and forwarding, an exporter, modeling, advertising, Toastmaster, humorist, publishing, editing, training, event management, and several more hats. He has failed in most of them, but has still not given up. He has spent 27 years in advertising, another 20 years in publishing and the media, and 30 years as a Toastmaster. In August 2021, he received the Toastmasters International Presidential Citation and was inducted into the Toastmasters Hall of Fame. He's a certified laughter coach, trainer, leader, and laughter ambassador. He sits on the board of the IAA as VP Impact and Southern Africa Development. He's the president of the American Chamber of Commerce, AMCHAM in Mauritius, managing director of Mind Initiatives in Mauritius, and he's the publisher and managing director of the Himalayan Times in Kathmandu. Toastmasters, please help me welcome distinguished Toastmaster, Ravin Lama.
Thank you, Zivai, for that warm introduction. It is truly a pleasure being here. Thank you, Toastmasters. I know a very good evening to all of you from Mauritius. A very small request, if it's possible, can you all switch on your cameras just for a while before you can switch it off again? Thank you so much. It's truly an honor and pleasure to be invited by speak on this module, which is the L.E.A.D Executive Development Programme. And these days, you know, we get caught up with all these acronyms. One of my favorite stories is about this boy who's chatting with his friend on his laptop and says, hey, dude, guess what? Dad sent me a friend request on Facebook. And then he writes WTF. So the dad who was just passing by peered into his screen and said, son, what is WTF? Quick as a flash, the son turns, looks at his dad and says, welcome to Facebook, Dad. So the father says, thank you, son. So today we're going to have a lot of acronyms, but before we begin, can you please indulge me with a short exercise? Can you just raise your left hand? All of you, can you raise your left hand? Wiggle your fingers. Wiggle your fingers. Now take your forefinger and your thumb and form a circle. All right. Now very quickly on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, place it on your chin. You know, your chin is here. It'll be an absolute pleasure and delight to be talking to all of you. I know it's the end of the day. So just wanted to make sure that all of you are mentally alert, because we're going to talk about another acronym. So what I'll do is let me share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
So today, as Zivai mentioned, we'll talk about leadership influence in a VUCA world. I've tried to put as many points as possible. I'll try and share some stories from my experience, which will help explain some of the points better. So welcome to the VUCA world. Now, what is VUCA? VUCA is basically an acronym, which I'll explain later, but it came about, it was born in the US Army War College in the late 80s. It was basically there to describe the new kind of world that was sprouting after the end of the Cold War. Oh, sorry. So what does VUCA actually mean? So the V stands for volatility, because in the current world we are living in, everything has become very volatile. Can you all hear me? I think my screen has frozen. Zivai, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly, and
okay.
are seeing the slide.
Thanks. So V is for volatility, because we are living in a world where things are very, very different, very volatile. We have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. The U is for uncertainty, because as I said, thanks to the pandemic, which was there last year and still continuing, we're not very certain. There is always that element of unexpected surprises. And it is very difficult to predict what is going to happen next. So whatever business plans you have won't work anymore, because you will now need to up your game, think differently, think outside the box. The C is for complexity, because things have become even more complex. Things are very different. As I said, you know, multiple events and forces have now come into play, and there's a cause and effect chain. There is a lack of roadmaps. And the A is for ambiguity, because again, there is absolutely no sense of clarity. No one really knows what the true reality is. You know, things keep changing every day, changes by the minute. You will watch the news every time there is something very, very different. So if you look at VUCA, what are the VUCA examples? So very simply, it's uncertainty, turbulence, rapid change, dynamism, disruption, complexity, hyper competition, high velocity markets, and flux. So these are the terms which would describe VUCA. Now we'll talk about VUCA in your club or in the office. How will it affect? What are the things we need to do? So coming to VUCA in your club or office. See, the VUCA situation occurs in business in times of learning, cutting policies, restructuring, reorganization. There's disruption, and it usually happens in businesses when mergers and acquisitions take place. And things change very rapidly because of the market forces. There are changes in management. A lot of people have been laid off because a lot of companies have shut. Departments have changed. The work policy, work ethics have changed. So the whole structure is now very, very different. On the club front, when members don't get along with each other, when there is a disrupt between the executive committee in the club, who are not able to address the challenges being faced. And sometimes it's very common in certain clubs. And it is up to the president of the club and the executive committee to see how to address these issues. So things are volatile. I'll give you a very example from my Kathmandu days when I set up the Kathmandu Toastmasters Club. It was the first club in Nepal. I was the president. So we had appointed a young student to be the treasurer of the club. A month later, when I checked with Somesh, I said, hey, Somesh, we need to send the dues to Toastmasters International because we need to get that point, for the presidential citation. So he said, yes, Ravin, I'll do that. A week later, I checked with him. He wasn't picking up his phone, wasn't responding to any messages. And then to my horror, I realized I finally cornered him and said, hey, what's happening? Apparently that 50,000 rupees, which he was supposed to have sent to Toastmasters International, he had spent it. So we were in a huge, huge dilemma. We had absolutely no idea what to do. I quickly called an emergency meeting of the executive committee and I said, look, guys, this is the problem we are facing. Somesh has apparently spent the money. He was a student, so I don't know what happened, but he spent money. There is no way we can recover the money from him. What was the course of action? It was a very, very critical situation for us because we had to send our dues to Toastmasters International. The only course of action I could think of then, and we implemented it immediately, was to be upfront with all the members and say that, look, this is what has happened. Everybody makes mistakes. If the members do not object, can everybody pay their membership dues once again? And I was pleasantly surprised when all the members pulled in and said, we understand the problem and the situation, and we need to support the club. And all of them readily paid up. So I was truly humbled and happy by the fact that, hey, we had a situation which was difficult to understand, but here we had members who were willing to help us out. So one big lesson I learned is whenever you are in a situation like this, always reach out for help. So in your club, in your office, whenever you need any help, always reach out. There will be people willing to help you out. Now, what are the effects of VUCA at work? Some of the points which I could think of was the radical or extreme power of the forces of transformation and change. Now, because of this, what would happen is not everybody is very comfortable with change. Change to a lot of people brings about fear, anxiety, confusion. There's a lot of negative stress, sometimes even paralysis, health problems, depression, frustrations, and anger. A lot of people tend to try and ignore or even deny that VUCA does exist. And for those who cannot cope with it, some either leave the organization, they can't take it anymore, or in a lot of cases I've seen happening in clubs is they just leave. I remember the time, I was a very strict president, but now I've changed. In those days, I used to go by the book, and I was very, very particular about following the manual, because my aim was very clear. I said, look, if you have to learn, if you have to improve, you need to put in your best. So one of our speakers hadn't followed the manual, and I asked him to repeat his project. He was very offended. He left. Now, those are some things we had to take in our stride, but it is something we learn, we have to get used to. Now, this is something very, very different. This is just in lighter vein, because we're talking about VUCA in the office. It's a very, very serious topic. So just to break the ice, this is VUCA at home, with offense to nobody.
Dans un camion de livraison, et puis j'atterris ici. Oh, c'est incroyable. Hein? T'entends ça, chérie?
Ben oui, c'est fou.
Back to the office. Now, what is the effect of VUCA on leaders? Again, I've just jotted down a few points which I wanted to share with all of you. Now, as a leader, what VUCA does is you have to be prepared for the challenges which face you. You have to anticipate the possibility of change. You have to try and understand the consequences of the decisions and actions that you take. And you need to prepare for and accept new realities to create and sustain trust in your teams and organizations with confidence, inspiration, and purpose. Now, how do you use VUCA as a strategy? See, for a lot of companies, VUCA is used as a deliberate management strategy. Companies may introduce VUCA to shake up their teams so that they can perform even better. They reorganize, the restructure in the hope that there would be a better breakthrough. Like, for example, when the pandemic happened last year, all of us were working from home. A lot of companies also started working from home. Even now, considering that the borders have opened up, offices are open, the management still feels that the crisis is still not over. So they have enforced a new working style where you come in, say, once a week, or at the most twice a week. So what happens is the whole work culture has changed. And this has been brought about by VUCA. Because of this, the hope is that this would inject a new kind of energy and speed into working in the new normal, to see, how things can be done differently, how teams can be more productive. And there is also that hope and desire that working in a different environment, like say, for example, at home, you would be more inspired, and that would create or bring about more creativity and innovation. So welcome to the VUCA world. These are the requirements. Now, for a lot of people and organizations, VUCA can have a very destructive impact because it is something people and companies have not dealt with in the past or have embraced. This is something we need to get used to. We have to accept that. So leaders have the responsibility to anticipate what are the different potential VUCA situations. The managers and teams also must develop situational awarenesses. They need to be more dynamic, agile, and possess a quick understanding. Your decisions need to be super fast. You're not very sure, the decision you take is either right or wrong, but it always helps to take a decision, because if it's wrong, you learn. If it's right, you still learn. So these days, you have to take that call, and that is the true hallmark of a leader who takes the rap and is willing to take on all responsibility no matter what happens. I must share with you the Amul story of how one company, I don't know if you've heard of a company called Amul. Amul is basically the Gujarat Milk Marketing Federation, the largest producers of milk in India. They go by the brand name of Amul. And last year, during the pandemic, when all the factories and companies in India were shutting down, Dr. R.S. Sodhi, the managing director, thought very differently. And his approach was completely different. It shocked the whole industry. What he did was he doubled his production. He doubled his capacity. He took over all the other milk factories which were shut down, paid them rates which they had never expected. He increased the payments to the milk farmers who were supplying milk to Amul. And his thinking was very clear. They did research in the market and they discovered that because everybody was at home, professionals, everybody was working from home, the consumption of milk and milk products had gone up. So milk, cheese, paneer, ice cream, the volume had trebled. So what he did is he ramped up production like crazy. Trains were not running, so he hired the coaches to transport milk and milk products all over India. So because of that, what happened is his sales trebled. Now here was a leader who took that risk, who took a call, understood the market dynamics, and unlike other companies who said, hey, the pandemic is on us, the first thing we need to do is cut our advertising budget, cut our marketing budget, we need to downsize. He did completely the opposite. He hired more people. He took on more companies and launched 34 new products in the market last year. So that is what Amul did, of how you can think differently. So welcome to the VUCA world again. Now, for diverse teams, VUCA demands intercultural skills. Now, in a lot of countries, especially in the US, they are very more open. They welcome change. There is less ambiguity. People are very open and honest with each other. So it's easy to connect and work. But in Germany, it's very difficult. People don't like change. They always have that fear of what is going to happen to our jobs, because it's always 9 to 5, very, very stereotyped. So anything which disrupts the workflow is something they're not very comfortable with. And it's not only Germany. For example, in Mauritius, it's the same. People do not like change. So in a VUCA world, I think we need to embrace the different kinds of changes which happen, the kind of challenges which come into play, because guests are metal. Managers will need to brace their teams. They need to look at short-term planning. See, because as I said, the whole work culture has changed completely. The whole mindset has changed because we need to work by the minute, see how volatile the system is, how volatile the situation is, and then adapt and make situational changes. Now, VUCA comes with this usual threats and opportunities. Now, what are those threats and opportunities? Now, some of the things we need to look and address and be very clear is the efficient cross-team communication. This is extremely, extremely important because communication has to be clear. There has to be an open channel of communication. You have to address, if there is a problem, talk about it, address those problems. There's no point keeping quiet about it. For example, in Mauritius, it's such a small island, there is nothing a secret. So the whole world knows about it. So there is no point in hiding things. It is better to be open and upfront. So here is an opportunity to at least discuss things with the staff, with the colleagues, your peers, and the employees. It teaches you to be on high alert because you never know what's going to happen next. Now, because of this, the stress levels are extremely high. We've heard of a lot of cases, there's a lot of burnout, people are getting into depression, a lot of people are being laid off. So, as I said, we need to look at things differently. People and teams should be given more freedom to take action, to take decisions, make decisions, because you cannot be there on the ground all the time. And as a true leader, you should have that kind of confidence and trust in your team to say, listen, guys, here is the freedom, but with some caution. Because you never know, they may always come up with sudden solutions. The most important thing is, in the current VUCA world now, there is no time for slow thinking. You have to trust have full faith in your employees, and you have to give them the permission to move ahead with full. So you have to trust them now on a much faster level. There's no question of saying that I will slowly build trust. I need to see how he delivers before I can trust him. You have to now just trust your peers, your colleagues implicitly. Leaders in the VUCA world are characterized by their resilience, the ability to bounce back whenever there has been a failure, whenever the chips are down. You need to get up. Mauritius is very, very resilient in that way, especially when there's a cyclone, there's a huge amount of destruction. The whole country gets together as one family and help each other out. So it should be the same kind of mindset in companies where leaders should take on that responsibility and have the ability to stay cool and keep their heads. I love that quote by Kipling. He says, if you must have all heard the poem, If. I look at it a bit differently. My if is, if you can keep your head about you when everybody else is losing theirs, you probably don't know what the hell is happening. But jokes aside, you need to maintain your cool in any situational crisis, especially now. By taking bold and quick decisions, you increase your capacity to be skilled. You, like impromptu speaking in the Toastmasters Club, it is something, you pick up quickly. Apply that in the workplace, because it gives you then a clearer vision of what you want to do and what are the next steps you need to take. Leaders need to be comfortable in the VUCA situation. This is something, as I said, you have to get used to. It requires a high level of situational and self-awareness to deal, most importantly, with grace, poise, and courage. And somebody asked Ernest Hemingway once, what is courage? And Ernest Hemingway smiled and said, grace under pressure. I think that's one of the best quotes of how courage can be defined. So all of us leaders, when we are working in the VUCA world, we need to have that courage. We need to have and take that leap of faith in any situation we are accosted with. As I said earlier, in the VUCA world, the whole game plan has now changed. The established rules and processes no longer hold water. You need to look at things in a very, very different light. You need to see how you can innovate, how you can improvise, how you can, if you're in the production, how to increase production. If people are working at home, how do you ensure that they are as effective as when they were in the office? And the sad part is, although we're working from home, a lot of us and managers don't realize, or leaders don't realize, that the workload, especially for women, has doubled. Kids are at home, so most of the time it is usually the lady folk who look after the kids, take care of their homework, do the cooking, do the cleaning. I do know a lot of husbands now who pitch into work. They have no option, but it always helps, to work together. But working from home is not easy. Workload is doubled. So we need to see how we can use that time to work more effectively. See, because working from home is like working 24/7. You're always on call. You're thinking of work all the time. Whereas when you're in the office, you're there at 9, you finish at 5, you go out, catch up with friends, then come back, spend time with the family. But now work is 24/7. So there may be structural breakdowns, because there's so much pressure now on you working from home. And as I said, 24/7. So we need to look at new ways of how to get over working 24/7. How do we take breaks in between? How do we innovate, come up with new processes, face realities, and then see, how we can implement them? We need to look at fresh new tactics, strategies of how to take on the challenges and changes in the VUCA world. Now here we talk about the VUCA success strategy. Now, VUCA contains many threats, many challenges and dangers. So it is up to leaders to get their teams to successfully adapt, negotiate, and use the forces that VUCA unleashes. So here are some of the tips I have. Most of you will be familiar with it, but it is always good to try and re-emphasize, reiterate what is there. So please forgive me if some of them is something you've already heard about. Now I've categorized them into different sections, where first some of the qualities of a leader. Leaders should be courageous, because one is to accept an element of risk in decision making. There is always that risk, because sometimes you're not sure of what I'm doing is the right decision or not. When Sodhi took that decision of doubling his capacity, he took a massive risk. What if it had backfired? He would have been sacked. But being a true leader, he said, let's go for it. And he got full support from his team. So you need to have that courage to take that risk. You also have to realize and accept that all plans change upon contact with reality. Things are very different. What you see, what you perceive, sometimes a lot of perceptions, which is completely different from reality. So as a leader, you need to think that through. You also need to see and seize every opportunity in change. As a change is difficult, but this is the time to prove your mettle, to see, what works, what doesn't work. As a leader, you need to have that self-awareness, because as I said, in the VUCA world, you need to accept, embrace, and feel comfortable. There is no way of getting out of it. You cannot wish it away. It is a harsh reality, and we have to come to terms with it. We have to accept it. As a leader, you will need to focus on the outcomes, results, and solutions, not problems. And as I was telling Andrew, this session, the boss telling his employee, have you come here with a solution, or are you a part of the problem? So try and look for solutions rather than focusing on the problems. Get into focus groups, get into group discussions, see what will bring out the creativity in the group. Be a little more self-aware, and always allow and encourage your colleagues, your peers to make mistakes. That is the best way to learn. It's the same, in the club. You give your first speech, you make a lot of mistakes. You have your evaluator who guides you. And what I love most about the rules at Toastmasters is you never criticize. Whatever suggestions you give always has a positive outcome. It's always a positive feedback, never criticism. So always encourage your colleagues to make mistakes, to take decisions, and then try and explore new methods and ideas of how to work in the VUCA world. Leaders should try and be influential to promote, it's a very dismal, bleak period, there's doom and gloom, but there is always that ray of sunshine, there's always that silver lining in that cloud. So you are the one as a leader who needs to be optimistic and say, hey guys, let's do this, let's give it a shot. Try and inspire them, do something different, motivate them, show them films on motivation, do some team building, build that positive energy in the environment. As a leader, you need to change mindsets to enjoy the surprise and thrills of the unexpected. And unexpected, it is there completely, in the VUCA world. So try and use, these days we're on the net, we have access, we try and join the webinars of every Toastmasters club around the world, This is absolutely, in the real world, we would have never had the opportunity to network and meet so many people from around the world. But now with just one click away, we have access to multiple tools, tactics, strategies. You talk to complete strangers who are willing to lend a helping hand to tell you where you're going wrong. So as a leader, encourage that. Get your team to network, to meet. It's always good, as I said, try and meet your competition. You should compete in the marketplace, but in the evening, you should be able to sit down and have a drink and discuss. So ask your colleagues, your peers, to use the best of their time in today's world, especially when they have to network with complete strangers. It's worth it. Communication opens up all channels. And you need to maintain that channel of communication within the organization. Be very open about it and try and communicate. As I said, one of my favorite stories is about this blind beggar who was sitting in Madison Avenue, sitting on the ground with a little placard saying, I am blind. So one day, Jim was walking by. It was first day he had just joined his new office. He was coming by. He stopped and saw this blind man with a sign. I said, excuse me, my name is Jim. Can I make a few changes on your placard? So the blind man said, be my guest. So Jim took out his pen, scribbled a few words, and went his way. In the evening, when he came back, the blind man recognized his footsteps. So Jim said, hi, John, how were collections today? And John, with complete awe in his voice, said, I have never received so much money in my life before. What did you write? So Jim said, I simply added, it is spring. I am blind. Communication should always come from your heart. Although the heart is here, I always believe the heart is here. It's from the mind. If you communicate with an open heart, with an open mind, with an emotional appeal, communication becomes extremely powerful. You can connect with complete strangers. Be more proactive. As Toastmasters, one of the skills is the listening skills. Be more attentive. Sometimes, we tend to have that habit of speaking our mind, projecting that we are the best, nobody is better than us. But there is a lot by learning through listening. When I joined Toastmasters, I always believed that to be a good Toastmaster, you needed to have good speaking skills. Your command of the English language should be perfect. But I was proven wrong. We had one Nepali Toastmasters back home in Nepal, whose command of the English language is not very good. But when he came to the podium, he could connect with the audience. He would make us laugh. And then I realized that it is not how you express your work, it's the way you connect with your audience, how you make them feel. So as a leader, listen more than you say. There's a lot you can learn through listening. And always try and be very inclusive, promote that. How can we solve this together? Rather than imposing yourself, be participative in your team, check with them and see that as a group, how can we work? See, each one has his own set of skills. Use those set of skills in a group collectively. We never know what brilliant ideas you may come up with, but learn to communicate with emotion. Leaders should try and be creative. Now, most of us, how many of you think you are creative? Raise your hands. Quite a few. I believe all of y'all should have raised hands because we, in our day-to-day life, we are creative, but we always tend to misjudge and think that it is only the creative people who are creative. It is the copywriters, it's the artists who are creative. We are always looking at shortcuts in our daily life. Suppose your button is broken, what you do to staple it. Isn't that being creative? Because the idea is to have the sleeve closed. So, or you put a clip, that is being creative. So we are all creative in our own way. So as a leader, be creative and encourage your team to be creative because that will help bring about innovation. Empower your team to promote innovative solutions, reward them. Because people like to be rewarded, they like to be recognized. And celebrate when somebody has done something good. And when somebody has been creative, share that idea with the world. Enhance your team and management situational awarenesses. Make your team more aware of why it is important to be creative, because it will help the organization. Leaders should learn to respect. Leaders should never demand respect. Leaders should command respect. And if you respect your team will respect you. So particularly in a VUCA world where you think that you have the experience, you work longer, harder than everybody else, which is not true. If you respect every member of your team, no matter how low down the pecking order he is, it will always show they will respect you back. And respect the expertise of your team. I remember the incident of the general manager who was working with his ad agency. And he had the best copywriter. He had the best copywriter. So he was telling the copywriter, he said, you should write this. So the copywriter, Freddie Birdie, looked at Rakesh Malhotra, the general manager, and said, sir, do I tell you how to run your hotel? Taken aback, the general manager says, no. He said, then why the F are you telling me how to write copy? Because that's my job. I am good at it. So the general manager shut up after that. So learn to respect others abilities, feelings, and respect people's fear of the new, fear of change. See, all of us are scared of the new normal. We don't know how to deal with it. We think we can deal with it. We put on a very brave front. But most of the time, we are absolutely clueless. We have no clue. We have the foggiest idea of sometimes how to do things, and we are scared to admit that. You need to be a little more understanding by showing respect and saying, I understand your fears. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss this together. Leaders should be empathetic. As I said, publicly acknowledge and celebrate all the victories in the team. It creates that sense of bonding. You feel wanted, you feel loved, and you need to put in more. So sometimes, the atmosphere in the office is such that it's so good that you want to leave, be the first guy in the office and the last to leave. Build that kind of environment. Now, for example, how do you do that when people are working from home? Discuss and see how you can do that. Do group activities. See, what would work best. Because as I said, we need to think differently. Share responsibilities with team members. Don't keep passing the buck because you're the boss. Not true anymore. Lead by example. Take on the additional responsibilities. So your team members will then realize that, look, you are empathetic towards them. You understand how they feel. Because sometimes there's too much they can't handle. So try and be there to hold their hand. Build an authentic sense of camaraderie and trust. Be their friends. Be the boss, be the leader, but have an open door. Be very open to them to say that, look, I understand how you feel. Let me know if I can help you in any way. That is the best way to help your colleagues grow. People and organizations in VUCA situations can be safely and successfully steered and managed, just like the captain of a ship. And in the last session you did, you said, I'm the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul. When you're out in the sea, in the rough, it is the ability of you and your teammates who can help steer that ship. So VUCA brings out the best and worst in people and teams. So you need to see, how you can utilize that situation to steer yourself and get out of troubled waters. As I said, the potential for the self, for you as a leader, for the club development is immense. There are so many opportunities to look. Don't look at all the challenges, all the dangers. Look at the opportunities. The challenges are great. The opportunities are fantastic. Coming back to Soli, he saw a huge opportunity. He grabbed it with both hands. And look at where Amul is now. I would like to, besides the other tips, one bonus golden nugget to combat VUCA. And this is something most companies, I'm talking from the Mauritian perspective, have now introduced. I wanted to talk to you about one aspect which has really helped people all over the world, and that is laughter. Laughter is the best medicine. And I'll show you a small video which tells you why laughing is important, why laughter can help change our mindset, change our outlook towards life. Most of us think that, we need to look at somebody, hear a joke, and then you have a quiet laugh. But you do not get that health benefits by laughing. So let me share this video with you, then you'll understand why laughter is important.
My name is Dr. Madan Kataria, and people call me Laugh Doctor. One day, inspiration came to me like a divine light. I discovered the beneficial effects of laughter. Laughter boosts your immune system and relaxes the mind. So I started laughter clubs. At first we were 5 of us. Now there are hundreds of laughing clubs all over India and the world. Laughter really is the best medicine. Everyone can discover this.
Every morning on Laguna Beach, California, you'll find a group gathered on the sand, laughing. There are no jokes, no punchlines. They're laughing for no reason at all. Before you write this off as just another off-the-wall California fad, you should know laughter yoga was the brainchild of Indian doctor Madan Kataria. What began with 5 people in a Mumbai park in 1995 has spread to more than 5,000 laughter clubs in 50 countries. More than that, Kataria says the breathing and laughing of laughter yoga will improve your health, even if you have to fake the laughter. It's a claim backed up by Lee Burke at Loma Linda University. Burke has found laughter decreases stress hormones, improves our immune system, and boosts endorphins. Those are the brain chemicals associated with the runner's high. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN.
There is a new exercise craze that is sweeping the nation, and you can take part right here in the metro area.
What's so funny that has grown adults rolling on the floor?
Certainly it is helpful, and there have been a lot of brain studies that look at the changes in the brain as people are laughing. And we do notice several changes.
Ça alors, troisième partie, on va clôturer ce chapitre consacré au langage qui font mouche avec les cours du docteur Madan Kataria.
Une philosophie, oui, mais surtout beaucoup d'exercices ludiques pour retrouver le sourire. Une idée qui plaît, Madan compte déjà plus de 1000 clubs de par le monde. Et c'est ça qui est bien, car tout le monde n'a pas le rire facile, comme on dit. Mais ça n'a pas d'importance, puisque même le rire forcé produit les endorphines qui feront du bien à votre corps.
La troisième partie de ça alors, c'est une tradition. Ah oui, j'ai dû rire dans la salle. C'est le moment qui nous permet.
So when we heard about an unusual new exercise that promises to make people happier, because we sent Reggie to check it out, Mr. Complainer. We sent Reggie, our resident skeptic, to test out laughing yoga, first developed in India by a medical doctor. Our resident cynic, my makeup artist, Mr. Reggie Wells, is not quite convinced.
What the hell am I doing?
Oh my God. Is it possible that Mr. Complainer of all times himself has a change of heart?
Ooh.
Did laughing yoga do it for you?
Laughing yoga did it for me, and I had to walk into that laughter very depressed.
You did feel better when you left the class?
So it stress lifted from my soul.
Yeah.
It's lifted from my body.
Yeah, you did.
Because I felt so much better.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Yogic laughter from public parks to workplace. There is a small factory where 25 workers all gather in the morning. First thing, they laugh out and then they start to work. What a way to start to work. 1, 2, 3.
So all I have to say is laugh. It will remove the stress and enjoy the ride. Thank you for your patience.
Great, thank you so much, DTM Ravin Lama, for taking us through leadership influence in a virtual VUCA world. There were a few people who posted questions in the chat box, but what I will ask is we take our 5-minute bio break now and then come back for the question and answer segment. So go and grab some water, a hot beverage, stretch your legs. But before you do that, let's light up the chat box. Let's send reactions, thanking DTM Ravin for this session that he has taken us through. And we are so much better equipped than we were before. So those who did not know what the VUCA world is, now you know what that acronym stands for. So thank you so much, DTM Ravin. Let's take our 5-minute bio break and we will get back to the question and answer segment. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you were able to stretch or to even get a refill of your beverage. I will go to the chat box and start with the questions that had been posted there. And then those who would then want to unmute and ask their questions can then proceed to do that. I'm trying to go as far back as possible. Toastmaster Margaret asked, how do you command respect rather than demand respect?
A good question, Mark. Let me give you an example. You know, when I was running a company in Nepal, we had hired a young student. His name was Ramesh, a very hard worker, very sincere, very honest. I never treated him as an employee, more like a friend, because I knew he was studying and working as well. So I always made that extra effort to find out more about his family, what hardships was he facing, and personally, I would try and help him. So what happened was, he left the company years later. The other day, I'm now talking about 20 years, he sent me a very nice letter. He says, dear sir, thank you for all the help which you gave me and the encouragement. I managed to save and I have built a house. It was basically thanks to you that I was able to rise so high in my career. So make that effort to help people, not only on the professional front, but also on the personal front. But do that discreetly. Don't let others know about it. Get more involved with them and their family. So when you show a personal interest in people, they will always reciprocate. They will respect you.
Thank you for your response. Then Toastmaster Patricia had asked, is fear respect? And there were responses in the chat box, but probably we can hear from you, your comment on that question or your response.
I don't think fear is respect. See, what has happened is times have changed. It is very easy now to read through people. And you know immediately if your boss is faking it or if the employee is actually in awe of the boss. So you need to be open about it. And I don't think fear should be taken as respect.
Okay, and so how do I know as an employer if it's fear or if it's respect?
I think then you need to meet on a social basis, see, because in the office, things are very different. You know, you're always on your guard. You always want to put on your best front. But it is up to the boss to find out on a personal, individual level, is it really fear or is it respect? And I've always believed, you know, that when you share a meal, when you break bread, when you share a drink, people are more open. So that is when you'll know the truth.
Great, thank you for that response. I am just scrolling down, because most of them were comments. So I'm just checking on the
change.
Okay, those are all the questions in the chat box. If you want to raise your hand.
There was something on change, I believe.
Okay, probably I skipped that. If you're seeing it from your end, please read the question for us and then respond.
I don't recall, but somebody did mention that it is very difficult to accept change. Let me share my favorite Zen story with you. This story is from Nepal. There was a young monk who got the opportunity to travel to the US. He was going to New York. So all his fellow monks got around him and said, hey, great, great. So when you're in New York, you must try out the American hamburger. He said, great. So he landed in New York, checked into his hotel, and then went to Central Park and looked around to buy a hamburger. And then he saw a hamburger man in the distance. So he goes up to him. He was dressed in his monk's robes, which is the maroon garb. And he went to the hamburger man, took out $10 and said, "Give me a hamburger." So the hamburger man made his hamburger, gave it back to him, gave the hamburger, but did not return any money. So the monk was very intrigued. He looked at the hamburger man and said, "Hey man, what about my change?" And then the hamburger man looks at the monk very seriously and says, "Change must come from within." You need to change yourself first before you change others. Embrace change, it is always important.
Thank you for that. I think we definitely need a laughing session for us to actually then loosen up a bit more.
Zivai, the other story changes. Who said, "Don't be the change, bring the change"?
Don't be the change, bring the change. I love that.
Who said that? Who said that? Can anybody answer?
There's a hand. I don't know, Hannah, do you want to tell us who said that?
Is it Mahatma Gandhi? Or
No.
Mandela?
Mahatma Gandhi said, "Be the change."
Well, the answer I have makes sense in Zimbabwe if you have ever used taxis.
Absolutely right. Don't be the change, bring the change.
Yes.
Bring the change. Great.
Absolutely right. Congratulations. Good one.
Well, we do live in a country where they use the United States dollars, and a lot of, well, in Zimbabwe, when I'm back home. Right now I'm in Namibia, so we kind of don't have that problem. But one of the things when I visit Zimbabwe, one of the things they always say is, "We don't have change. We hope you brought it." So the taxi conductors always say that.
Thank you, Hannah.
But I did have a question.
Sure.
I did have a question.
Yes, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, it's somewhat situational to our Toastmasters Club.
Okay.
So I liked all the things that leaders should be and should try to be creative and to get to your club or your subordinates to change. But we recently had our Toastmasters retreat, which is a change which we introduced. We have a leaders retreat for the Exco. So every beginning of the year we have a retreat and we go and we discuss the things that we want to do in our different portfolios and the changes we want to make. But right now we're actually at an impasse with regards to our online meetings as well as the in-person meetings. We're literally right in the middle where we've got three of the Exco members saying no and the other three saying yes. So now what happens? Like I am the president currently, so I was thinking, think fast is not going to happen. There's no way I can just host an online meeting. What happens when people don't see your vision? Right, in a VUCA world, probably you can see ahead. How do you then motivate your leadership team to be on the same page as you? I've even had to go and read conflict resolution notes so that we can get this off the ground.
And that's a very good question and a situation. See, the biggest advantage we have these days is all of us are online. We can connect with any Toastmaster club anywhere in the world. If you reach out to Toastmasters anywhere, get them in as guests. So what happens is it makes your session more exciting. For example, Andrew called me yesterday and said, "Hey, Ravin, can you do the session?" Now, I've always had a weakness for Toastmasters. So I immediately said yes. I could have said, "I'm sorry, I've got a lot of things to do," which I actually did. Because my wife was complaining, she said, "Your whole Saturday is gone, trying to put this presentation together." So if you try and bring in guests to make the session more interesting, like say, for example, introduce new sessions. It could be something on laughter, it could be something on humor, it could be something on cooking, on reading. What will happen is your members will then be interested to say, hey, let's check this out and see how it goes. So you have to keep getting them interested. You know, curiosity is very, very important. And it brings about the ability to learn fast. Kids are always very curious. That is why they are like sponges, you know. They absorb everything, and because they're curious. So go for sessions where you bring in new speakers every time. Have a guest speaker every fortnight.
Thank you. I think, yeah, we will use that approach. So far, we just agreed that we'll continue with our 2 sessions. Well, we haven't agreed, but we made one. We're having a vote for it, that we have 2 sessions in person and then 1 session online until people hopefully warm up more.
Hannah, the other thing you can do is, you know, have a monthly, whatever, a talent meeting. Ask one of your members to showcase his or her talent.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We didn't have that option.
Thank you so much. Then Toastmaster Edith says, very insightful session. Thank you, DTM Lama. Change is hard and people receive it differently. This reminds me of the book I read, Dealing with Change, Who Moved My Cheese? Then there is a question from Toastmaster Patricia. How does one focus on solutions if you don't focus on problems?
See, first you need to understand what the problem is. Get your team together to discuss, you know, what are the possible solutions, and get in as many people as you can. See, because now you're in a situation, if you're online working from home, get everybody on the team to try and participate. That is where the solutions will come from.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? Anyone else with a question on leadership influence in a virtual VUCA world? Thank you, Toastmaster L.E.A. I see your hand.
Evening. So Margaret asked this question earlier and I was following it to see if there was a response where, Ravin, you mentioned leaders should command respect and not demand respect. What does that look and sound like in a professional environment?
See, it depends on the organization. Which office are you working in?
I work in a school. I'm a deputy principal.
Okay, so you command a lot of influence and respect from the kids because they look up to you.
Yes, very true.
So it is natural, you know.
How do you do that with adults? I think it's easier in the classroom.
Not really. See, because sometimes kids think that teachers are complete idiots. So it's the same in the workplace, in the organization. If you can share your knowledge, if you can read more, if you can attend more webinars, seminars, whatever, and then share that knowledge with your colleagues, you will gain their respect. You need to show them that you know more than them. But you need to demonstrate it. You need to handhold, like you have the mentorship program in Toastmasters. Why do mentees look up at mentors? Because they realize that the mentors know a lot more, and then they can learn those skills and knowledge, imbibe that knowledge from their mentors. So it's the same in any organization. As long as the boss or the leader can share that knowledge with the colleagues, with his peers, he will never be able to command respect.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands. Is there anyone else with a question? Toastmaster Onika, please go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you so much for the wonderful presentation.
You're welcome.
I have a strong personality, and I have overheard my team saying that they are very scared of me. Sometimes I tend to defend myself. I'm like, no, they're not scared. It means I'm a true leader. They're misrepresenting what could be happening. So instead, I would really like to understand if what they are saying can be true, and how do I get to a conclusion where I can convince myself that they're not scared of me. It's actually true leadership. Thank you.
Monica, one of the points which I may have skipped out is I believe that great leaders always have humility. The more humble you are, the more respect you command. Take, for example, Madiba. Do you think he was proud? He was extremely humble, and that is why he commanded such great respect. Despite having spent 27 years in jail, he forgave his jailers. It was the humility in him, which brought about the change in the people around him. And they looked at him with respect. So I don't know how humble you are, but if you try and be a little more open, if you embrace humility, you will know exactly, and you'll be able to distinguish if they actually fear you or if they respect you. Monica,
Master Onika, are you
answer the question?
Answered?
Noted. Thank you so much.
Great. Toastmaster Patience, please unmute and go ahead with your question.
Good evening to us all. Thank you so much for the session. And
Patience, your volume is very low.
Okay, it's
Ziva, can you hear Patience?
It's my voice. I've got a very bad cold, so
okay.
I'll try and speak as loud as I can. I hope. Hello, am I audible?
Ziva, I cannot hear. Can you repeat the question when you hear
Okay, can you go ahead with your question, Patience, and then I'll probably repeat it after you.
Okay. So my issue is more around a current situation that I'm facing right now, where I've just joined an organization that is truly in this VUCA environment. There's a lot of volatility, complexity, and a lot of all that going on due to new competition. So I'm barely 3 months in that organization, but what I'm realizing is the people who are there are sort of stuck in the past and are moving at the pace is quite slow and not quite responsive to the environment that we are in. So in terms of trying to influence upwards, some of them in terms of ranking are above me, but there are issues that I see and issues that I suggest. But because there is a way, a culture that they're used to, how do I then, in this VUCA environment, try and awaken them to see other ways of doing things that are not necessarily what they're used to, as we try and respond to these new threats in the environment that we are grappling with right now within the company. I try to summarize it. I hope it makes sense.
Ziva, I just got bits and pieces of that.
Okay, she is in a work environment. She joined the organization. She's barely 3 months in the organization. And there are things that she's noticing and seeing that would need to be changed, but how does she influence upwards? Because the other employees and those in leadership are stuck in the old ways, and there's that culture where they are set in their ways. So she's saying, how can she influence upwards?
Let me try and answer. It's a very interesting question. Let me try and answer that. See, amongst all the influencers in the organization, you will try to identify at least one of them, who is open to listening to you. Once you can identify that one influencer and have a one-on-one conversation, express your fears, express all the issues you have in mind. If you're very open about it, I am sure that influencer will then speak to a second and then a third. But you will need to identify that one influencer in the organization first. I don't know how open you are with your supervisor or your boss, but if it's a team, it's a board or something, try and identify that one person, that one link, and work through that link.
Thank you for your response. Patience, are you answered?
Yes, I think it's helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Patience.
Okay, she says it's helpful. Thank you very much. Toastmaster Mduduzi, please unmute and go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Toastmaster Ravin. I have a quick one. In the VUCA world, we have seen as leaders that we have made a decision to do more with less. And with that being said, we see our team members actually that they are quite stretched. The ripple effect of that is that the Toastmasters Club, we have our members as well who are stretched in this time. How would one as a leader try to influence the members to be effective, as stretched as they are in the VUCA world, especially where they are employed, and also to be able to be effective and engaging in Toastmasters?
Bonoro, good question. I've always believed, if you look at all the training courses in the world and see the cost, and if you see the cost of membership of the Toastmasters, which is $95 a year, there is absolutely no other course in the world which can match the kind of learning you get at Toastmasters. I've been a Toastmasters for 30 years, and there is a reason I stuck along, because there's so much learning you can gain, absorb from a Toastmasters club and from the manuals you get. It's the most brilliant manuals because it's been put together so effectively that it has an impact. And if you want to grow in your career, it's Toastmasters. 30 years ago, I had gone to my grandfather's house to spend the day with him. This is back home in Nepal. I was returning back. I was sitting in the bus. And when my stop came, there were no other passengers. So the bus driver didn't stop. I didn't have the courage to say, this is my stop. I need to get off. The bus went to the second stop, no passengers. I still didn't have the courage. Third stop, fourth stop. After the sixth stop, which was nearly 6 kilometers away, the bus stopped because one passenger had to get off. I quickly got off. I had to walk back 6 kilometers because I did not have the courage to speak up. And that was the day when I trudged back home. I vowed that I would never let this happen again because I admitted that I was scared of public speaking. So that is why I joined Toastmasters. I got into advertising, got into publishing. And from that day, I've never looked back. Now, it is that Toastmaster training which basically helped me build that level of confidence that I can connect with anybody I want now. So what you need to impress upon your members is the kind of learning you get at Toastmasters, you will never get anywhere. The kind of feedback you get, you are assigned an evaluator. You have a manual. The best feedback you can ever get is through your evaluator. And once you progress through your pathway, the kind of learning you will never get it anywhere else. So I think try and use that angle of the best learning to improve your professional skills. See, because public speaking is important. Whenever I hire people in Nepal, what is the first thing I look for? The level of confidence. Number two, sense of humor. So how does that level of confidence come? It's by interacting with people, giving public speeches. So if you follow your Toastmaster courses faithfully, there is so much you can learn. So that is something you need to impress upon the members, that it is not just there you come and give a speech. If you're serious about it, there is so much you can learn and the kind of impact you can make on people. And Toastmasters is the best place to teach you all that.
Thank you kindly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your response. Toastmaster Bonolo, and then I'll move to the questions in the chat box. Toastmaster Bonolo, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Vavai. Ravin, I have a question which is in some sort kind of tedious, but
it's all right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So my question is, as a leader, especially a young leader, where you have in your circle a lot of experienced people, older people, and you are put as their leader, how do you go about being an effective leader, especially with them around you, but keeping that monicum of respect? Because in our African culture, we're taught that there are certain things you don't say to elders or address elders in a certain way. However, when you're put as a leader of those elders, say someone who's 20 years older than you or 10 years older than you, there are certain ways in which you need to address them that our traditional culture does not allow. Now, how do we bridge that gap?
Barolo, I think you're talking in a work environment.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. See, what I would go do is, in the workplace, try and be the first to initiate anything. You know, always take that first step to be the first one to raise your hands, to volunteer, to do anything. So what happens is you will soon get noticed. And it's not necessary that you need to address. If you volunteer for any assignment, any job, your credibility goes up because you're always seen as being the one who's very enthusiastic about accomplishing new tasks, new goals, new objectives. So if you give it a shot, see how it works by trying to volunteer for whatever you can. It has worked for me.
Toastmaster Bonolo, are you answered?
Partially.
Oh, you're still not happy.
Okay, so let me just give you a scenario. If
Sure.
Let's say I'm a CEO of an organization. Okay, so I'm CEO of my own company, and I've recently just hired 5 people who are 10 years, 12 years older than myself.
Okay. Right.
Now, when addressing them or when exercising that authority, is there a mechanism which can be used not to bridge certain lines of respect or of saying that I'm your boss, but you're younger than me, or I don't respect you as in your age capacity? I'm not sure if you get me.
Well, I understand. Bernard, yes. One thing we need to be very clear about is who pays them their salaries. Bernard, can you unmute?
Yes, sir.
Who pays their salaries?
I do.
You have your answer.
See, if you are paying their salaries, you call the shots. So it's not that you're disrespecting them in any way. As the CEO of the company, you have to look at your bottom line of how these elders can help benefit the company. So the question of disrespecting just doesn't arise. See, because you are paying them their salaries, you can always speak to them respectfully, but make it very clear that you're the boss.
All right, I get you there. Thank you.
Great. I'll quickly move to the chat box so that we can then get our assignment for today. Toastmaster Sigrid asks, how can one overcome fear and take the lead? How to increase self-confidence and radiate it?
The best way to address fear is to take that leap of faith to do what you hate doing. If you are scared of public speaking, you need to deliver more speeches. So any fear that you have, sometimes it is always that fear of the unknown. You always have the fear of what will people say, what will people think. And we're more scared of society than of ourselves. We lack that confidence, we lack that ability in ourselves. We are always our harshest critic. And I think that's being unfair. Sometimes we need to pamper ourselves. Sometimes we need to take that leap of faith and say, let me see how I can do that. So jot down what your fear is and see what is the best way of addressing it. Talk to a friend, get that friend involved, get a mentor, reach out to a mentor. These days there are always people who are willing to help you out. And they will be the best guides to help you address that fear. But you need to take that step. You need to know exactly why you are scared of that.
Thank you for your response. And the next question, please share insights on how we help women leaders in a VUCA world. You briefly mentioned that needs working together. What would working together look like in and out of the Toastmasters world?
See, it would depend on the organization. It would depend on situation. I've always believed that women, it's not that I'm trying to praise or get brownie points, women are far more intelligent and superior to men. Men, we must admit, we can't multitask. Women, their brains work so intelligently, they can do 4 or 5 jobs at a time, especially in a home, you're looking after the kids, you're cooking, you're doing various other jobs. Men, we can only do one job at a time. So somehow I feel that, women need to exert themselves more, because I believe that they are the best man for a job is always a woman. It's a sad fact that in the corporate world, it's a man's world. Men, they get that feeling of inferiority, that, hey, this lady or woman is better than me. So they will do their best to try and run down that lady woman. But we have to see, how can women become entrepreneurs, how they can set up their own companies. That is why, for example, in Mauritius now, the government is encouraging women to become open small business enterprises, which will help them grow. We've got bank loans for 0.5%. This is just an opportunity for women to grow. So if you are not being recognized in your workplace, I think you need to start something on your own. When Ted Turner was at the CNN, he had a placard on his desk. And the placard said, lead, follow, or get out of the way. So I believe that as a women leader, if you are not being recognized in your workplace, see how you can collaborate with friends and start something of your own. There will be a lot of people who will be there willing to help you out.
Thank you. I'll ask just one last question from the chat box. In the VUCA world, with COVID-19 having affected organizations,
do you see e-leadership being as effective?
Definitely. See, this is the new normal. We're all working from home. All meetings are there on Zoom. You talk to anybody, you're jumping in from one meeting to the other. Now, as a leader, you will have to innovate ways to excel at being a leader. But it is the new normal. There's no questions about, because with the pandemic, again, I come back to Mauritius, cases rising. Most of us are working from home. We will have to try and devise methods of how to prove that we are great leaders.
Thank you. I will now hand over back to you, but Toastmaster Alia says, can DTM Ravin say that again? Women are what? I think, yeah, we liked the ring and the sound of that. So I'll hand over to you to give us our assignment for this particular session.
Is it necessary to give an assignment?
It would have been advisable to give us something to work with, but if it's not something you'd want to give us an assignment to do, then it's all up to you as the facilitator.
Zivai, I think, because people are already overworked. What I can do is I can share my presentation. It's a weekend. And at least, y'all are here at 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, listening to me. Sunday is a day of rest. Take some time off, enjoy time with the family.
So that's a perfect assignment. So our assignment for this week is to take a break, take a rest.
Exactly. That is the assignment. Spend time with the kids, spend time with your...
And probably laugh a bit more than you've been laughing
absolutely
before. So that's
laugh
our
like
assignment.
So laugh as if you've never ever laughed before.
So there you have it, our assignment for this week. We are laughing like we have never laughed before. So at this point, I will just go back to, there was one question in the chat box. Is there a difference between leadership, authority?
Zivai, the line just broke up. Can you repeat the question, please? Zivai, I didn't hear you.
Is there a difference? Okay, sorry, I think it's connectivity. The question is there a difference between leadership and authority?
Authority is something what the leader asserts. So as the boss, as the leader, he has the right to assert his authority to get work done to accomplish the goals of the organization. Did I answer the question?
From my end, I would say you have answered it. I'm not sure if the person who had typed in the chat box is satisfied with the response, but I'm sure they are. So we just want to thank you, DTM Ravin, for coming in and taking us through this session, our session 5 on leadership influence in a virtual VUCA world. I am sure each and every participant has a lot that they're taking away with them and getting to understand, especially in the environment that we are operating in. So we truly appreciate you and just taking the time to be with us for the past 2 hours. So if we can just light up the chat box, send our reaction buttons, if you want to unmute and do what as Toastmasters do.
Yes, yes. Woohoo!
Great presentation.
Yes, 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 yes.
And thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Woohoo! We really appreciate you. And also, I just want to acknowledge friends of District 74 who continue to join us each week. Those from Washington, D.C., and those from Antigua and Barbados, and also from Montserrat. So thank you so much for joining us. I will ask all of us to turn on our videos, our cameras, so that our Zoom masters can take our group photo before we call it an evening. So please turn on your videos and let's have our best smiles, because we don't know when the slides will be coming to our page.
Ziva, I think you must call for the best smiles all the time.
Okay, so let's have those permanent smiles. And I know Toastmaster Andrew is always the one of the happy ones each time when I look on the screen. Toastmaster Amelia, I see you. Some have decided to start on the assignment. All good. And very contagious. So you can unmute and start on your assignment while the photos are being taken.
I'd request everybody to unmute and laugh. I think that's the best way to start your assignment. Please unmute and laugh.
I think I got a number of good shots.
And Toastmaster Burgess.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. My fellow leaders. My fellow leaders of District 74 and our
thank you.
friends
Bye-bye.
of District 74. Thank you so much. And exactly.
Thank you, everybody.
1958.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a laughter-filled weekend.
Bye-bye.
Those who want to continue laughing as they exit, feel free.
Please do.